Hey guys, Zen here, and some of you may not be aware of this, but Frost is actually on the list of upcoming reworks in Rainbow Six Siege. She's there alongside Glaz, Lion, and even Thatcher. Now, with Year 4 just around the corner and the big reveals coming very soon here, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of discuss some of the ways that Frost could be changed and reworked into the meta. I actually think there's a few things Ubisoft could do to kind of make Frost a little bit more mainstream and hopefully make her a more viable pick on defense. Real quick guys, check out Now Sense. It's a focus drink designed for gamers. We've partnered up, so if you're interested, click the link in the description and use code ZEN for 10% off. Now, some of you may be confused. You probably see Frost fairly often in your ranked matches, and so the fact that she's on the list of getting reworks might not make a ton of sense, and for the longest time, that's exactly how I felt. I use Frost a lot. There was a point in time that I actually mained this operator, and I love her. I think that she's fundamentally a great operator, but if you do take a look at the most recent win delta and pick rate data, you can see that Frost is basically middle of the road. Her win delta is basically dead even, but it's actually her pick rate that's surprisingly low. In general, in those ranked matches, she's being picked less than Castle, which is very surprising. Now, when it comes to both of these operators, I think the biggest point of interest to the community is their gadgets. I think everyone can pretty much agree that Castle has way too many counters on defense and is the lead reason why he isn't being picked that often in ranked. But if you look over to Frost, she has a lot of those same counters. There's still the explosive utility counter, and on top of that, you can just as simply shoot one out and destroy it. So you could make the argument that Frost welcome mats are a lot easier to take out than a Castle barricade. Now, before we move on, I actually wanted to ask you guys of your success rate with Frost Gadget. How often do you find yourself getting it down with a welcome mat? Is it every match? Is it every other round? Let me know in a comment down below. Now, at the 6 Invitationals, you never know what kind of surprises Ubisoft has up their sleeves. You don't know what kind of announcements they have planned, so it could be possible that they announce a full rework for Frost. And so next, I wanted to talk about some of the ways that I would change her. So starting off with her gadget, I actually think the welcome mat in its current state does have a place in the meta, especially because it's pretty much the only trap that isn't electronically powered. So Thatcher, Twitch, they don't have any effect on the welcome mat. Now, of course, it is really large, and so I would start there with the rework. Right now, Frost welcome mat is actually considered a leg trap. It traps you from the kneecap down. So I would say cut that directly in half and create somewhat of a foot trap. Make it much smaller and much easier to conceal behind cover or under a window. Now, there is a strat that's somewhat popular in the meta, and I'm sure some of you have used it, and it's basically the double welcome mat strat. You place 2 welcome mats. Instead of horizontally, you place them vertically right next to each other, either behind a window or behind a deployable shield, and it makes it very difficult for an attacker to hop through and shoot and destroy it, because of course, if they shoot and destroy one, they may not be able to get the other one in time. So there really isn't any way to combat this as an attacker unless you use explosive utility, and I think if that's already a strat, you could make it a lot easier and a lot more simplified by shrinking the size of the welcome mat, and then it could be a viable strat that could be used in some other areas, because as of now, you can't use that on every window and behind every deployable shield because of just how it fits. So I think if you make the trap smaller, that strat would be made a little bit more viable, and it would make that trap a lot more lethal. The next thing that I would do is actually take a page out of Kapkan's history book. So for those of you guys that may be new to the game, Kapkan used to be a 3 armor, very heavy and slow operator, and he also used to have less traps. Now, there is always the fact that he had the red laser on his traps and it made them a lot more obvious, but I think it was the combination of dropping him down to a 2-speed as well as giving him more traps that made him a little bit more potent and a little bit more viable in the meta. So I would say take those same lessons learned and apply them to Frost. Right now, Frost is a 2-speed 2 armor operator, and generally speaking, I do think that she is balanced, but if we're talking about making her a little bit more appealing, maybe make her a 3-speed 1 armor operator and give her one more Frost map. Setup time during the prep phase is a trap operator's most crucial point. You have to take advantage of your time as best as possible and utilize it in a way that allows you to put all of your traps around the map or around the objective, set up your walls, put on your rook armor, and find your spot to settle in and wait for the attackers. Now, when Kapkan was a 3 armor, very slow operator, setting up his traps took a very long time, especially if you wanted to put one away from the objective. It just took a while while, and it was really difficult to get back to the objective and complete all the rest of the tasks that you have to do. Now, if they were to give him those extra traps that they did and not buff his operator speed, it would have been way too difficult to set up all 5 of those traps as a 3 armor operator and not get picked off by an attacker while you're trying to scramble back to the objective. So buffing his operator speed and making him faster was a must if they were going to give him more traps. Now with Frost, the same thing could be said here. If you give her another welcome mat going from 3 to 4, I think you would need to be a little bit faster to confidently set up all of your traps and make it back to do everything else that you have to do. That is definitely something that I think a lot of trap operators don't take into consideration. And I know it's something for me that if I don't utilize that time perfectly, a lot of the times I'll end up getting picked off either while I'm trying to deploy my last few traps or on my way back to the objective. So I think if the goal is to give Frost more welcome mats, they're gonna have no choice but to increase her operator speed and make her a bit faster. Now, my second suggestion for a rework to this operator is actually a combination of changing her secondary gadgets as well as giving her main SMG more options for attachments. Now, when it comes to her secondary gadgets, I think Frost was a lot better off without that bulletproof camera and with the deployable shield. Now, I've talked about this concept a lot in the past, but operator synergy is something that I think is really important when it comes to the balancing of these individual operators. I know Ubisoft wants to promote teamwork and for you to kind of ask a teammate to bring a deployable shield if you want that kind of setup, but when Frost could set this up on her own, it made her a lot more lethal, and it also opened up a lot more options for where she wanted to place her welcome mats. Now, as far as her main SMG, my biggest issue with it is the fact that I cannot equip a holographic sight to it. Now, I realize that the model of the weapon really doesn't allow for it to fit there, but it is the most popular sight next to the ACOG, and I think a lot of the reason why the community doesn't want to pick this operator is because they can't equip that holographic scope. Now, obviously, Frost is a 2-speed, so she would never have access to the ACOG scope on defense, but if she did have a holographic scope, I think a lot more people would be confident in using her SMG, whereas right now, if you aren't a fan of the reflex or red dot, you really don't have any options when it comes to optics for this weapon. The next attachment that I would love to see on her SMG is actually a vertical grip. Now, on basically every single weapon that has it available, I use the vertical grip because it makes the recoil pattern just super consistent. It makes it a lot easier to master. Now, Frost SMG doesn't have some crazy recoil pattern or is incredibly bouncy, but it does have a really slow fire rate. So if you're not pinpoint accurate, a lot of the times you will be beat out by the attacker's assault rifles. So I think giving Frost back her deployable shield as well as buffing up her SMG with those 2 attachments is another approach at a rework to this operator. Now, finally, my last suggestion to change Frost is to actually make her welcome mats bulletproof. Now, this is an idea that I've heard a lot throughout the community, and it makes a lot of sense. If you make her welcome mats bulletproof, you then are forcing explosive utility to deal with them, which basically completely eliminates the attacker's ability to hop over a deployable shield or hop through a window simply looking all the way down and just shoot out a Frost mat. I think when Frost was first released, that counter didn't really exist. A lot of people didn't know that they could hop through a window and simply shoot out a Frost mat that was waiting there under it. It's kind of similar to the bandit trick. When the game first came out, the bandit trick wasn't really a thing. It took the community some time to really learn that this was a viable strat and this was something that they could do long term. And now, especially with the Frost mats, I think a lot of people understand and know how to properly shoot one out as they're coming over a deployable shield or through a window. But that's everything, guys. Those are my ideas for how Ubisoft could rework Frost. And given the fact that she is on that list and year 4 is right around the corner, we could be seeing some announcements very soon here. Just quickly going over them. First, I would change the footprint of the current leg trap into somewhat of a foot trap, making it much smaller and a lot easier to conceal. On top of that, I would make her a 3-speed operator so that she could place her welcome mats much quicker and get everything else that she needs to get done complete. Next, I would give her a deployable shield back, and I would also buff her SMG by allowing it to have both the holographic scope as well as a vertical grip. And finally, probably the most prominent of the changes, I would make her welcome mats bulletproof and force explosive utility to deal with them. So that's everything, guys, and now I want to hear from you. What are your current thoughts on Frost? Do you think she needs a rework? And if and when it does happen, how would you change her? Let me know everything in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. With that being said, it's been Zen. Hey, I'm out.